Overwatch 2 has been out for several weeks and everybody has shared their thoughts and opinions about the game. And while I was in queue of 30,000 people waiting to get into the game at release only to then get bumped out of the game or lose connection, to then have to wait hours again in queue to get into the game to rinse and repeat for the first couple days, I had a thought to myself: to wait. I wanted to let everything digest and give Blizzard the opportunity to fix the mistakes they had made at launch and then come back and visit the game and give my thoughts and opinions. But also, I knew I was going to be biased about this game because Overwatch 1 has a special place for me. It was the last great game, as I refer to it, of my youth. It was the last game that I played with my original core group of friends. The friends that I played elementary school, middle school, and at the time high school, all played video games together. This was the last game that we all played before our life started, before college or relationships or families, before video games became a thing on the side and life took over. So I will always have that biased opinion about this game because the memories I have are not so much the game itself, but the people who I played it with. But I knew that going into this game, so I wanted to give it time, and my thoughts have really settled, and I'm going to express my opinions and thoughts of Overwatch 2 from shortly before release up until now. So before we get into the actual gameplay and the game itself, I wanted to talk about two controversies that were surrounding the game right up until the game was released. And those are the name change from McCree to Cassidy and the implementation that you have to have an active phone contract in order to play this game. Now, both of these controversies had a bunch of backlash from the community. However, with the name change specifically, I feel like if you did a little bit of research into it, no one should be upset about it. Basically, Blizzard has allegations of sexual harassment in the workplace alongside toxic behavior and negative behavior surrounding work environments. Now, whatever your opinion is about a name change, if someone's acting like that, they shouldn't be in a work environment. And the person who McCree was named after was involved in those said allegations. So they did the right thing by taking that name out of the game and changing them. Now, I do think there's a mixed confusion between people who are upset that they changed the name and people who are upset with what the name is. Me personally, I don't like the name Cassidy for a rugged cowboy. However, I don't care. I'm not playing a character based off of their name. I do like how they changed the character if the person he was named after was involved in said allegations. Now, the second controversy, I do feel like I am contrary to most people on this. I do tend to take Blizzard's side with something like this, although there were a lot of people that were very upset about the fact that you were not going to be able to play this game if you didn't have an active phone contract. Now, it was believed up until release that you were going to need an active phone contract in order to play Overwatch 2. A prepaid phone wasn't going to work, and if you didn't have a phone number, you were not going to be allowed to play. However, if you look at the commentary from Blizzard prior to the game's release and then the actions that they took after, I kind of agree with their decision. Now, there's two sides to this. The community argued that it was discrimination against poor people and people who didn't have cell phones or didn't have contracts and only had prepaid phones who weren't going to be allowed to play. And the Blizzard side of things is that this was just another security measure to get rid of toxic people and people who are negative, because if they ban your phone number, you don't have another phone number to play the game. So Blizzard looked at it as another form of security, and the community looked at it as discrimination against poor people because you just wanted their phone numbers to sell them to other companies. Now, keep in mind, this was all prior to release, because the moment the game came out, Blizzard buckled and axed that and completely changed the requirements. If you had never played Overwatch 1 or never had an account prior to June of 2021, you would still need a phone contract and a phone number in order to play Overwatch 2. However, if at any point you ever played Overwatch 1 on your computer, you were not going to need to link a phone number. And as previously stated, if you played Overwatch or had a linked Battle.net account on a console since June of 2021, you were also not going to need a contracted phone. So I think what they did the day after the game was released in regards to this was to take a small group of people who weren't going to be allowed to play this game and made that group even smaller. I think the group of people who would not have been able to play Overwatch 2 simply because they didn't have a contracted phone number is a lot smaller than people think. Also, they made it clear in the post that if you had a prepaid phone, you could submit a ticket and work with customer service to find a way to connect your account. I'm not out here defending a multi-billion-dollar company's decision to get your phone number to perhaps sell it to another company for more money, but I am defending the fact that it is a company's right to make a decision about their video game. Overwatch 2's release was a disaster. It was a nightmare from the start. It was the worst video game experience I have ever had with a new game. I don't know if it was the worst release ever, but it was definitely the worst one I've been a part of. You would log into this game only to find yourself in queue with 30, 40, sometimes even 50,000 other players. And at first you think, oh, it's just a glitch, but no, that's real. And you would wait hours and hours only to be next in line to then get into another queue of a few thousand. And after that, you could finally play the game. Now, Blizzard later posted on their forums that was because the first queue was Overwatch 2's and then the second queue was their Battle.net queue. So there were legitimately two separate queues you had to wait in. Now, this was all prior to even playing the game, really prior to being at the main menu, because once you got into the game, you would get countless disconnect errors. You would get halfway through a game only to get disconnected. And I never saw anyone else comment about this, but for the first few days, I felt, and I even kind of documented, that every hour I would get disconnected. It almost felt like every hour they were refreshing the servers so people who were waiting longer could get in, only for you to have to go back and sit into the queue. I have no proof of that. No one else seems to have had that happen, but that's how my experience went. Woo! And the worst part about this is that with knowing that Blizzard is a multi-billion-dollar company, you would think they would be able to fix this relatively quickly. But it wasn't fixed the release day. It wasn't even fixed the day after. It was several days after release till it finally fixed the issue where when you logged on to the game, you were able to actually play the game. Whew. With all that out of the way, we can finally talk about the gameplay of Overwatch 2. And let's start with the differences from Overwatch 1. The biggest and most prevalent change from Overwatch 1 is the removal of a player. It is no longer a 6v6, it is now a 5-on-5. And I absolutely love this change. It makes the game much more intense, it makes the game much more team-oriented. Overwatch has always been a game where you rely on teammates to work with you, but with 5-on-5, gone are the days where if you lose one tank, you have another one with you, or if you lose a healer, at least you have big tanks in front of you to protect you. No, there's one tank and you have to rely on them, and if they get killed, chances are you're running away from the enemy team. It's great and I absolutely love it. Also, there were 3 new champions added to the game. Junker Queen, a tank character, Sojourn, a DPS character, and Kiriko, a support character. Although Kiriko was with the season pass that you either had to buy or rank up incredibly long in order to unlock her, Sojourn and Junker Queen came with release. Overwatch 2's gameplay is very similar to Overwatch 1, and I think for that reason alone, people are going to speak negatively about this game. However, I really like it and I enjoy it. I've always liked what Blizzard has done with this game. I've always liked the combat. I feel like it's great where there are some characters you can one-shot and there are some characters that you have to shoot 1,000,000 times to kill. Characters who can heal themselves, shield themselves, invisibility, protect themselves. Some characters can fly. I've always felt like they've done really good at balancing all those different things, and I really enjoy it. They didn't break the world with a new game mechanic. They didn't change anything. They didn't make anything obsolete or change the way a character should be played. Everything is pretty much the same. It just seems like they added some more love to it, some more graphical design to it, some more care. And as I sit here writing this script, I'm finding it hard to come up with things I dislike about the gameplay. Of course, there are things that annoy me, things like getting one shot, things like getting killed by someone invisible, always kind of annoys you. And there are some alts that I think maybe aren't balanced enough compared to others, but that's the point of the game. Nothing has to be exactly perfect. And that's what I really like about this game. So instead of trying to find and reach at straws to find things I dislike about the gameplay, I'm gonna just leave it at this. It's a game where if you don't like Overwatch 1, you're not going to like Overwatch 2. They didn't change anything drastic, but I mentioned that there's really not many things I dislike about the gameplay itself. But there are a few things I don't like about this game in 2022, and that's mostly the gaming industry itself. And it all has to start with YouTube and Reddit and Twitter and everybody out there who makes tier lists and meta picks. And Overwatch 1 was still a time when there weren't that many people out there making that kind of content. So you played who you wanted, you played who you liked, and you had fun with it. Of course, there were characters that weren't as good as other characters, but if you enjoyed it, you played it. And unfortunately, the way video gaming has become in 2022, everybody just looks on YouTube for a pros tier list or a high ranked player's opinion about a character. And what ends up happening is every game you run into a Zarya tank and then a Mei DPS or a Reaper DPS, and it really just is the same type of game over and over and over. That's really nothing against anyone specifically. I understand people want to make content and people want to play who the best character is. However, it does take a little nostalgic away from the original game where you just played who you wanted and you weren't playing what someone on YouTube said was the best way to carry your games out of low elo and get high elo. And so for that, I think gaming in 22 itself has become a little disappointing for me. Not specifically Overwatch itself, but just the gaming world. The Overwatch 2 rank system is, to me, without a doubt, the single worst thing about the entire game. I think if they don't change anything quickly with it, it will drive a lot of players away from the game. Not only new players, but players like myself who are visiting the game after years of not playing Overwatch 1. So what Blizzard has tried to do with the rank system is cater towards people who have ranked anxiety. Your rank will not visually change until one of two things happens in Overwatch. You either win 7 games or lose 20. Your rank will not change unless one of those two things happens. However, it would make you think that if you win 7 games, you're going to rank up, and if you lose 20, you're going to rank down. That is not the case. That is only the timeline for when your rank will visually change. You could lose 6 games, win 7, and still derank. You could lose 19 and win 7 and still rank up. Don't believe me? That is exactly what happened to me on my very first time playing this game after placements. I lost 17 games and then won 7, and I ranked up. The rank system is all sorts of confusion, not to mention there was a bug when the game was released that great players were being put in really low ranks and everybody was getting all over the place. But the fundamental rank system itself, if they don't change it, I do think will drive a lot of players away. I want to talk about the season pass and the free-to-play model Blizzard adapted for Overwatch 2. I want to start off by saying I've never been someone who's purchased in-game cosmetic transactions. It's never been something I've ever really done. I do know that there are tons of people who spend hundreds if not thousands of dollars on in-game cosmetic changes, but for me, I've never seen the appeal to it. But I understand that people do enjoy it and it is something that people like to spend their money on. So I've never had a gripe against people who do it. And if you're really looking for someone to blame about the fact that skins are $20 in Overwatch 2, look in the mirror and blame yourself. Look at the games that are the most successful games right now in the world. League of Legends, Valorant, Fortnite, Dota. What do all these games have in common? They're free to play. We allowed this formula to happen. We allowed the gaming industry to change like this because there are people who will spend hundreds if not thousands of dollars on cosmetics. It's how these games make money. They realize they can make more money from people if they do this way, and that's the way it's gonna be. And so before I say goodbye and give my final thoughts, there's one more question I wanted to answer, and that is, does Overwatch 2 have what it takes to stay relevant or popular in 2022? And the answer is, I don't know. I sure hope it does. There's a lot of things that I like about this game. There's a lot of things that I'll definitely come back and revisit from time to time about this game. But does it have what it takes to stay with the heavy hitters like League of Legends and Valorant and CSGO? All these games that have established themselves as good free-to-play games in 2022? We've made it to the end of the video. Did you watch the whole thing? Did you only watch a few minutes? Did you fast forward till now just to hear the rating? Whatever it was, I hope you enjoyed your time because I enjoyed your company. So taking everything we talked about in this video into consideration, as well as my outside of these script opinions and thoughts, I give Overwatch 2 from its current release up until now a 5 out of 10. I think the trajectory is trending upwards, and I definitely think that 5 will become a much higher number in the future due to all my concerns and problems being nothing to do with the actual gameplay. I make this a 5 out of 10 rating, Scary Harry 22 certified, and I recommend this to anybody who played Overwatch 1 and anyone who's looking for a new game that's not Valorant or Fortnite or CSGO.